A 14-year-old girl stood in her mother's bedroom holding a bloody knife. But that's not even the most disturbing story on this list. 18 children of Hollywood's biggest stars waited decades to reveal the truth. And when they finally spoke, entire legacies crumbled overnight. Number 7 story is absolutely devastating. The daughter who saved her mother. On an April evening in 1958, Beverly Hills police received a call that would become one of Hollywood's most sensational scandals. At the glamorous home of Lana Turner, young Cheryl Crane had just ended the life of her mother's boyfriend with a kitchen knife. Johnny Stompanato, a known associate of notorious mobster Mickey Cohen, lay on the bedroom floor, no longer breathing. The official ruling would be justifiable homicide. The newspapers told that story and moved on. But the complete truth would remain buried for 3 decades. Then, in 1988, Cheryl published her memoir, Detour, a Hollywood story. What she revealed transformed everything America thought it knew about that terrible night. The knife, the violence, the courtroom drama, those were just symptoms. The real story was what led there. A mother so desperately addicted to dangerous men that she repeatedly placed her daughter in perilous situations. Turner had built her career on glamour and sensuality, rising from poverty to become one of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer's most bankable stars. But the carefully maintained facade masked complete chaos. Turner cycled through 7 marriages and countless affairs, seemingly drawn to dangerous, controlling men who brought her nothing but pain. And through it all, young Cheryl watched helplessly. Johnny Stompanato entered their lives in 1957, handsome, charming, and utterly ruthless. He quickly revealed himself to be violently possessive. Cheryl witnessed arguments that turned into physical confrontations. She heard her mother's cries through bedroom walls. She saw the bruises Turner tried to hide with makeup and long sleeves. On the night of April 4th, 1958, the violence reached its terrible climax. Stompanato had come to the house in a rage, threatening both their lives. In the bedroom, he raised his hand to strike Turner once again. Cheryl, terrified for her mother's life, grabbed a knife from the kitchen and made a choice no child should ever have to make. The scandal that followed was enormous. Newspaper headlines screamed about Hollywood's sweater girl and her daughter's desperate act. The coroner's inquest became a media circus, with Cheryl forced to testify publicly about the violence she had witnessed. The ruling of justifiable homicide spared her from criminal charges, but nothing could spare her from the psychological weight of having taken a human life at 14 years old. Turner's career survived. Hollywood had a remarkable tolerance for tragedy when it involved their stars, but the relationship between mother and daughter never fully recovered. In her memoir, Cheryl described standing in that bedroom afterward, looking at her hands and thinking, "I'm 14. I ended someone's life, and my mother will never forgive me for this." She was right. Turner never truly forgave her for shattering the illusion. Cheryl wrote with painful honesty about loving her mother desperately, while recognizing that Turner's choices had stolen her childhood and forced her to commit an act of violence that would haunt her forever. She described nightmares that plagued her for decades, waking up seeing Stompanato's face, feeling the knife in her hands. Lana Turner's legacy transformed completely. No longer simply the glamorous star who had survived a scandal, she was revealed as a mother whose romantic desperation had endangered her child so severely that the child had been forced to take a life to protect her. While Lana Turner had loved her daughter even if she failed to protect her, Jerry Lewis spent decades raising millions for sick children while systematically rejecting his own. The comedian who disinherited all his sons, Jerry Lewis was America's favorite comedian for half a century. But his greatest role became his work with the Muscular Dystrophy Association, hosting annual telethons that raised over $2 billion. For 24 hours each Labor Day weekend, Jerry would plead with America to help Jerry's kids, often becoming tearfully emotional as the tote board climbed higher. The nation watched, donated generously, and revered Lewis as a humanitarian whose compassion matched his comedy genius. What the cameras never showed was the 6 sons from Lewis's first marriage to Patty Palmer: Gary, Scott, Christopher, Anthony, Joseph, and Ronald. They described a father who was emotionally absent, professionally obsessed, and seemingly incapable of showing them the warmth he displayed so readily toward children he had never met. One son later recalled watching his father on television, crying for sick children, and wondering why those tears never came for his own sons. The true extent of Lewis's rejection became shockingly clear when his will was made public after his passing in 2017. The 6 sons from his first marriage were intentionally excluded from inheriting anything. Not reduced shares or token amounts, but complete exclusion. The cruelty of that phrase, intentionally excluded, revealed a coldness that contradicted everything his public humanitarian persona suggested. But the story grew even more painful with the emergence of Susan Minaret. Born in 1952, Susan claimed to be Lewis's daughter from a brief affair. Despite her attempts to contact Lewis throughout her life, he refused to meet her or acknowledge her existence. In 2009, DNA testing revealed an 88.7% likelihood that Lewis was indeed her biological father. Yet he still refused any contact. Susan, struggling with Crohn's disease and living in poverty, watched from afar as the man who was almost certainly her father raised billions for sick children while denying she existed. The irony was unbearable. Jerry Lewis, the face of compassion for ailing children, had apparently rejected his own possibly ill daughter and disinherited 6 sons. The humanitarian who made America cry with his pleas to help suffering children felt no obligation toward his own offspring. If Jerry Lewis's cruelty was a cold calculation, America's next beloved icon inflicted damage through explosive violence. When America's crooner's sons called him a monster, Bing Crosby crooned his way into the nation's consciousness with a voice that represented warmth, comfort, and home itself. His recording of White Christmas remains the best-selling single of all time, evoking tender memories of family gatherings and childhood innocence. His film roles reinforced this image, particularly his portrayal of Father O'Malley in Going My Way, which earned him an Academy Award for playing a priest so kind and understanding that audiences wept. At home in Toluca Lake, California, Bing's 4 sons from his first marriage to Dixie Lee knew a very different reality. Gary, Dennis, Philip, and Lindsay Crosby grew up under their father's iron rule, where the slightest transgression could result in brutal punishment. Gary would later describe in excruciating detail the beatings administered with a leather belt, the emotional coldness that made affection feel like a distant dream, and the weekly weigh-ins where their father inspected them like livestock to ensure they maintained what he deemed the proper physique. Gary's 1983 memoir, Going My Own Way, detailed beatings severe enough to leave marks and cause genuine fear. More damaging still was the emotional abandonment, a father who was present physically but absent in every way that mattered. Bing Crosby, the star, sang about dreaming of a white Christmas by the fireside. But his sons were dreaming of a father who might actually love them. They listened to him croon on the radio about home and family, then returned to a house where love felt like a performance he couldn't sustain off stage. The true measure of the damage became horrifyingly clear over the following decades. In 1989, Lindsay Crosby couldn't escape the pain. At age 51, he ended his suffering permanently. In 1991, Dennis Crosby followed his brother. At 56, he too chose to end his life, rather than continue carrying the weight of their childhood. The contrast with Crosby's later family made the tragedy even more painful. By all accounts, Crosby became a different father to his 3 children with Catherine Grant. Warm, involved, showing genuine affection. This transformation proved he was capable of being a good father, which only made his failure with his first 4 sons more difficult to comprehend. 2 brothers choosing to end their lives provided tragic, irrefutable evidence that the damage was real and ultimately lethal. While Bing Crosby's violence was physical, the next legendary actress wielded words and rejection as her weapons. My Mother's Keeper and the ultimate betrayal. Bette Davis commanded the screen with an intensity and intelligence that made her one of Hollywood's most respected performers. 2 Academy Awards, 10 nominations, and dozens of unforgettable roles established her as the actress by which all others were measured. She played strong women, often mothers, with such conviction that audiences assumed she brought those same qualities home. Her daughter, B.D. Hyman, knew better. Throughout B.D.'s childhood, Davis had been a demanding, controlling presence who seemed to view her daughter more as a reflection of herself than as an individual person. Early warning signs of something darker emerged as B.D. grew into a beautiful young woman. Davis's jealousy became impossible to ignore. The breaking point came at B.D.'s wedding in 1964. In her memoir, B.D. described how Davis arrived intoxicated, made a scene during the ceremony, and later cornered Jeremy Hyman, B.D.'s new husband, to tell him that B.D. had always been unstable and that he should get out while he could. B.D. watched her mother trying to destroy her marriage on her wedding day. That's when she decided, someday, the world would know the truth. It wasn't until 1985, when B.D. published her memoir, My Mother's Keeper, while Davis was still alive and working, that the world learned the full extent of what Bette Davis, the mother, had been. The book portrayed Davis as a narcissistic alcoholic whose drinking fueled emotional manipulation and verbal abuse. The actress who had played so many formidable women on screen apparently couldn't tolerate seeing her daughter develop her own strength and independence. What made the memoir particularly devastating was its timing. unlike children who wait until after a parent's passing to reveal family secrets. B.D. published while her mother was 77 years old and still actively working. Davis had to endure seeing the book on bestseller lists, reading the reviews, and knowing that millions were now viewing her through her daughter's unflattering lens. Her public response was swift. She called the book a pack of lies and stated that she had no daughter. Davis even took out a full-page ad in Variety denouncing the memoir. Davis and B.D. never reconciled. When Davis passed away in 1989 from breast cancer, she and her eldest daughter had not spoken in years. The actress who had played so many powerful women left this world estranged from her own child, her final years poisoned by the memoir's revelations. If Bette Davis failed one child, the next star achieved the remarkable feat of becoming estranged from all 9 of his children. The father estranged from all 9 children. Mickey Rooney was the eternal youth of Hollywood, playing Andy Hardy in 16 films that defined wholesome American teenage life. For over 80 years, Rooney maintained a career that spanned vaudeville, silent films, talkies, television, and even Broadway. He was Hollywood's favorite son, America's perennial teenager. Behind this all-American image, Rooney's personal life was chaotic. He married 8 times, fathered 9 children with various wives, and seemed incapable of maintaining stable family relationships. His son Tim recalled his 8th birthday with particular pain. Mickey had promised to come. Tim sat by the window for 3 hours, cake waiting, refusing to blow out the candles until his father arrived. Mickey never showed. No call, no apology. 6 months later, Tim saw a magazine photo of Mickey at a Hollywood party that same night, laughing with strangers' children on his lap. The image haunted Tim for years. His father had chosen a photo opportunity with other people's children over his own son's birthday. The estrangement became formalized when Rooney's will was revealed after his passing in 2014. His entire estate went to his 8th wife and her children. His 9 biological children received nothing, not even a token acknowledgement. But the story had another disturbing dimension. In 2011, 3 years before his passing, Rooney testified before the United States Senate that he was a victim of elder abuse. He stated that his stepson was exploiting him financially and keeping him isolated. Yet during this same period, Rooney's biological children were being kept at a distance, unable to help or protect their father. The bitter irony was inescapable. Rooney claimed to be a victim of his stepfamily while simultaneously excluding his own children from his life and his will. 9 children cannot all be wrong about their father's failures. While Mickey Rooney failed through absence, the next 2 stars collaborated on a deception so elaborate, it robbed their daughter of her identity for decades. The daughter denied her own identity. Clark Gable was the king of Hollywood, the ultimate leading man. Loretta Young was one of the screen's most beautiful and devout actresses, known for her Catholic faith and seemingly unimpeachable virtue. When they worked together on the 1935 film Call of the Wild, filmed on location in the rugged mountains of Washington State, their off-screen chemistry resulted in more than just good performances. Young became pregnant. For an unmarried Catholic actress in 1935, this was catastrophic. Gable was married to Maria Langham, though separated, and had no interest in acknowledging the affair or the pregnancy. The studio system quickly moved to contain the scandal. Young disappeared from public view, claiming an extended vacation in Europe. In reality, she remained hidden in California, giving birth to a daughter on November 6, 1935. The baby, named Judith, was placed in an orphanage. For 19 months, Judy lived in institutional care while her biological parents continued their careers, pretending she didn't exist. Then Young announced that she had adopted a baby girl during her time abroad. The elaborate fiction allowed Young to raise her own daughter while maintaining the pretense that she had never been pregnant out of wedlock. Gable never acknowledged Judy in any way, never met her privately, never contributed a single dollar to her support. As Judy grew, the resemblance to Gable became impossible to ignore. She had inherited his distinctive large ears, square jaw, and facial structure. People constantly commented on the similarity, but Young maintained the adoption story with absolute consistency. Even when Judy began asking questions as a teenager, noting how much she looked like Gable, Young denied everything with such conviction that Judy began to doubt her own eyes. It wasn't until 1966, when Judy was 30 years old and married with children of her own, that she finally confronted her mother directly, demanding the truth. Young, faced with her daughter's persistence, finally admitted that yes, Gable was her biological father. But even then, Young extracted a promise that Judy would not reveal the truth publicly while Young was alive. The secret had to be maintained to protect Young's carefully cultivated image as a paragon of Catholic virtue. Judy honored her mother's request, staying silent for nearly 3 more decades. Only in 1994, 3 years after Loretta Young's passing, did Judy publish her autobiography, Uncommon Knowledge, revealing the full story. The book was written with remarkable grace, but the facts spoke for themselves. Young had placed her own infant daughter in an orphanage, raised her under false pretenses, denied her identity when questioned, and demanded continued secrecy even after admitting the truth. Young's carefully maintained image as a paragon of Catholic virtue crumbled completely. The exposure of Gable as a father who never acknowledged his daughter also tarnished his legacy, revealing moral cowardice beneath the masculine charm. But the greatest victim was Judy herself, who spent 3 decades believing a lie about her own identity, another 30 years knowing the truth but forced to keep silent, and finally telling her story only after both parents had passed away and could never be held accountable. If Loretta Young placed her baby in an orphanage to hide the truth, at least she eventually raised that child. But what happens when a mother adopts children specifically to create a perfect public image, then terrorizes them behind closed doors? Joan Crawford's daughter waited exactly 1 year after her mother's passing to publish the 3 words that would destroy a legacy: Mommy Dearest. Mommy Dearest, and Hollywood's most famous tell-all, Joan Crawford, meticulously crafted her public image as Hollywood's ultimate professional. A glamorous star who rose from poverty through sheer determination. Fan magazines showcased her as a devoted adoptive mother to 4 children, presenting her well-ordered household as a model of maternal care. Photographers captured Crawford organizing her children's closets, overseeing their studies, maintaining discipline with what appeared to be firm but loving guidance. She controlled every detail of her public image, ensuring that the world saw exactly what she wanted them to see. Behind those carefully composed photographs, however, a very different reality was unfolding. Christina Crawford, Joan's eldest adopted daughter, grew up in a household ruled by her mother's obsessive need for perfection and control. Then, in 1978, exactly 1 year after Crawford's passing, Christina published a memoir that would shock the world. The book was titled Mommy Dearest, and its contents were nightmarish. Christina described beatings administered with wire coat hangers, bizarre middle-of-the-night cleaning rampages fueled by alcohol and rage, psychological cruelty masked as discipline, and a mother whose pathological need for control extended to every aspect of her children's lives. The infamous wire hangers incident became symbolic of Crawford's impossible standards and explosive temperament. But the abuse went far beyond that single incident. Christina detailed years of physical punishment, emotional manipulation, and a household atmosphere where the children lived in constant fear of triggering their mother's volcanic anger. The most chilling detail Christina revealed wasn't the wire hangers. It was what Crawford whispered while beating her. "I'm doing this because I love you. This is what love looks like." For Christina, those words were more damaging than the blows. Her mother had convinced herself that cruelty was love, that brutality was discipline, that terrorizing children was proper parenting. The book became an immediate bestseller. In 1981, it was adapted into a film starring Faye Dunaway in a performance so intense it became iconic. The phrase, "Mommy Dearest," entered the American lexicon as shorthand for abusive parenting, and Crawford's legacy transformed overnight from Hollywood professional to monster mother. Crawford's 2 younger adopted daughters disputed Christina's account, creating a family division that persists to this day. But the damage to Crawford's legacy was done. If these revelations are shocking you, please subscribe to Golden Age Files. We're uncovering the truth behind Hollywood's most carefully guarded legacies. We have 11 more devastating stories ahead, and they only get more complex. Christina Crawford's book opened floodgates. Suddenly, revealing family darkness became almost expected. The father whose children paid the ultimate price. Marlon Brando revolutionized acting with his method approach, bringing an intensity and realism to performances that changed cinema forever. But while Brando was creating masterpieces on screen, his personal life was descending into chaos that would have devastating consequences for his many children. Brando fathered at least 11 children with multiple women across different continents. But whether from marriages or affairs, all of Brando's children shared one common experience: a father who was largely absent from their lives. Brando provided financial support, but rarely showed up emotionally or physically. He sent checks but not love, money but not presence. The consequences unfolded as tragedy after tragedy. In 1990, Brando's son Christian fired a weapon that ended his half-sister Cheyenne's boyfriend's life at the family home in Los Angeles. Christian was convicted of voluntary manslaughter and served 5 years. The trauma pushed Cheyenne, already struggling with emotional instability, into a downward spiral. In 1991, after Christian's conviction, Brando promised to change. He flew to Tahiti to reconnect with Cheyenne. For 3 weeks, she seemed better. They talked, they walked on the beach, and she smiled again. Then he left again, pulled back to Hollywood by work he deemed more important. 6 months later, she was gone. In 1995, Cheyenne couldn't escape the pain. At age 25, she hanged herself at her mother's home in Tahiti, leaving a note that spoke of unbearable loneliness and feeling abandoned by the one person who should have protected her. Other Brando children struggled with substance dependency and identity crises, scattered across the globe. The saddest part is that Brando acknowledged his failures. In interviews late in life, he admitted that he hadn't been there for his children. But acknowledgement without change is just words. And Brando never fundamentally altered his behavior. His children became cautionary tales about the cost of parental neglect. Proof that genius and fertility don't equal capable parenthood. Brando could have saved Cheyenne. He had the means, the time, the resources. But he chose his island solitude over his daughter's survival. Brando's neglect was passive destruction. But the next star actively exploited the vulnerable, and his own children would have to reckon with a troubling truth about the man who made the world smile. The comedy genius and his teenage brides, Charlie Chaplin brought laughter to millions with his little tramp character, creating some of cinema's most beloved moments. But his own children would eventually have to reckon with a troubling pattern that the studios had worked hard to conceal. In 1924, the 35-year-old Chaplin became involved with 16-year-old actress Lita Grey, who was cast in his film The Gold Rush. When Grey became pregnant, Chaplin faced potential criminal charges under California's laws. To avoid prosecution, he hastily arranged a private marriage in Mexico. Grey later filed divorce papers revealing that Chaplin had initially pressured her to undergo an illegal termination of the pregnancy. When she refused, the marriage was arranged primarily to avoid legal consequences, not out of love or commitment. The marriage quickly deteriorated. Grey gave birth to 2 sons, Charles Jr. and Sidney, while Chaplin allegedly engaged in multiple affairs and subjected her to emotional cruelty. When Grey filed for divorce in 1927, her 50-page complaint detailed Chaplin's controlling and demanding behavior, painting a picture of a man who viewed her as property rather than partner. But the Lita Grey situation wasn't an isolated incident. A disturbing pattern emerged across Chaplin's life. Chaplin's first wife, Mildred Harris, was 16 when they married. He was 29. Years later, he would pursue other very young women, some as young as 15. His third wife, Paulette Goddard, was 26, which made her the eldest of his spouses. And even she was significantly younger than Chaplin. For Chaplin's children, particularly those from his troubled early marriages, growing up meant grappling with their father's complicated legacy. Charles Jr. and Sidney grew up knowing that their parents' relationship had been born from scandal and coercion. Their mother had been a teenager pressured into marriage to save their father from prosecution. Later children from Chaplin's final marriage to Una O'Neill had to reconcile the loving father they knew with the man who had pursued teenagers when he was in his 30s and 40s. The pattern was undeniable. Chaplin repeatedly pursued girls young enough to be his daughters, girls without the power or experience to resist his advances. His children couldn't watch their father's heroic little tramp without thinking about the teenage girls he had pursued and pressured. The genius who brought joy to millions had caused profound pain to the vulnerable young women he exploited. Chaplin's exploitation complicated his children's relationship with his legacy. But the next star created damage born from vanity and bitterness. The heartthrob who disinherited 5 of his 6 children, Tony Curtis, was voted the most handsome man in Hollywood during his peak years in the 1950s and 60s. He became a major star in films like Some Like It Hot, Spartacus, and The Defiant Ones. Curtis seemed to have everything: talent, beauty, success, and a large family. He fathered 6 children across multiple marriages, including his most famous daughter, actress Jamie Lee Curtis, who would eventually become a bigger star than her father ever was. As Curtis aged, his children began to notice troubling changes. The charming father became increasingly difficult, bitter, and self-absorbed. Friends and family reported that Curtis struggled with losing his looks as he aged, that he resented being forgotten by Hollywood as newer stars emerged, and that he seemed particularly jealous of Jamie Lee's enormous success. While any parent should take pride in their child's achievements, Curtis apparently viewed his daughter's fame as a painful reminder of his own fading relevance. Curtis married 5 times, and each marriage produced children he would eventually distance himself from. The children watched their father's narcissism consume whatever paternal love he once had, transforming him from the attentive father of their childhood into a bitter stranger who seemed to resent their very existence. The final, most painful revelation came when Curtis's will was made public after his passing in 2010. He had left his entire estate to his 5th wife, Jill Vanderberg, and her family. 5 of his 6 biological children, Kelly, Jamie Lee, Benjamin, Nicholas, and Alexandra, received nothing. Only Allegra received a small inheritance. But the cruelest part wasn't the disinheritance. It was the addendum. Curtis had written a personal note explaining why each child was excluded. For Jamie Lee, he wrote, "You never needed me. You became famous without my help. So you don't need my money either." He punished her for being successful, for achieving what he could no longer achieve, for outshining him in the only arena that mattered to his vanity, Hollywood stardom. Jamie Lee Curtis's public response was dignified and restrained. She issued a brief statement. "I acknowledge the existence of my father's will." Those few words conveyed volumes: acknowledgement without validation, recognition without acceptance. She refused to give him the satisfaction of a public fight. Tony Curtis's legacy transformed from Hollywood heartthrob to cautionary tale about how vanity and bitterness can destroy family bonds. Tony Curtis destroyed his family through narcissism. But what about the stars whose moral compromises endangered others? Peter Lawford's children had to live with a terrible question. Could their father have saved Marilyn Monroe's life? The Rat Pack member, who enabled a president, Peter Lawford had something few actors possessed: a direct line to the President of the United States. And he used it to arrange affairs. His marriage to Patricia Kennedy, sister of President John F. Kennedy, made him the ultimate insider, a bridge between Hollywood glamour and Camelot's political power. But his children would reveal that their father's proximity to power came at a terrible moral cost. Christopher Lawford, who wrote extensively about his father, revealed that Peter served as what the family euphemistically called a facilitator for President Kennedy and his brother, Robert Kennedy. To understand why Lawford might have hesitated to help Marilyn Monroe, we need to understand his role in the Kennedy machine. More bluntly, their father arranged affairs, procured companions, and provided venues where powerful men could meet women away from public scrutiny. This was his value to the Kennedys: discretion and access. Lawford allegedly allowed his Santa Monica beach house to be used for secret assignments, becoming what some called the Kennedys' pimp. His worth to them depended on maintaining silence and protecting their secrets at all costs. The most damning revelation concerned Marilyn Monroe. Lawford was the last person known to have spoken with Monroe before her passing on August 5, 1962. When Marilyn called Lawford that evening around 7:30, her speech was slurred and concerning. Some sources suggest that Lawford knew Monroe was in distress, but faced a choice: save her and risk exposing the Kennedys' connection to her, or protect the powerful and let her struggle alone. His children grappled with evidence suggesting he chose the latter, perhaps even calling the Kennedys first to warn them before calling for help. Lawford's children described their complicated feelings: pride in their father's talent and charm, but profound shame about his role as an enabler whose moral compromises may have cost Marilyn Monroe her life. The question haunts them still: could he have saved her? And if so, why didn't he? Peter Lawford enabled others' darkness through moral compromise. But some stars embodied darkness themselves in ways their children could barely comprehend. The swashbuckler whose son revealed his father's fascism, Errol Flynn, was Hollywood's greatest swashbuckler, the dashing hero of Captain Blood and the adventures of Robin Hood. With his athletic prowess and undeniable screen magnetism, Flynn defined cinematic heroism for an entire generation. He played men of honor, fighting against tyranny and injustice. His son Sean seemed to follow in his adventurous footsteps, becoming a photojournalist who covered dangerous conflicts. But Sean's letters would reveal a son grappling with disturbing truths about his father. Sean Flynn's letters, written before he went missing in Cambodia in 1970 and is presumed to have perished, revealed a young man wrestling with contradictions. His father was a screen hero who might have harbored sympathies for history's greatest villains. The letters showed Sean's journey of discovery, each revelation more troubling than the last. First came the publicly documented truth: Flynn's 1942 statutory violation trial involving 2 teenage girls. Though acquitted, the trial exposed Flynn's pattern of pursuing very young women, some as young as 15. Sean's letters described his struggle to reconcile his father's heroic screen image with a man who exploited teenage girls. But that wasn't what tormented Sean most. Gradually, through his work as a journalist and his access to government files, he discovered something far more disturbing. Flynn had been investigated by the FBI during World War II regarding rumored Nazi sympathies and alleged espionage activities. The allegations were never proven, but they raised troubling questions about his political views during humanity's darkest hour. Some reports suggested Flynn had entertained German officials before the war and made statements sympathetic to fascism. In Sean's final letter before his disappearance, written to his mother in 1970, he wrote, "If the allegations are true, everything I believed about heroism is a lie. The man who taught me to admire courage and honor may have sympathized with monsters. I don't know if I can live with that truth. 3 weeks later, Sean went missing in Cambodia while covering the war. He was never found. The ultimate irony was inescapable. Hollywood's greatest screen hero was possibly sympathetic to history's greatest villains, and definitely guilty of exploiting vulnerable young women. Flynn's children couldn't watch their father's heroic performances without thinking about the darkness behind the smile. We're 2/3 through these revelations, and they've taken us from abuse to exploitation to enablement. Which story has affected you most deeply? And what golden age topics should we explore next? Let us know in the comments. We read everyone and use your suggestions for future episodes. Errol Flynn's children revealed political and moral darkness. But some stars created a different devastation, one born not from villainy, but from an inability to give love. The mother who left her son $5,000? Barbara Stanwyck was Hollywood's toughest, most capable leading lady. She succeeded in a male-dominated industry through sheer talent, playing strong women who refused to be victims. In 1932, Stanwyck and her husband Frank Fay adopted a 10-month-old boy they named Dion, seemingly completing the picture of her success. The relationship deteriorated completely as Dion grew. He struggled with behavioral issues. She struggled with emotional availability. Those close to Stanwyck recalled that she showed love through providing material security and maintaining discipline, but seemed unable to express emotional warmth. She could play tender mothers on screen with remarkable authenticity, but at home, that tenderness evaporated. Those close to both suggested the breaking point came when Dion was 16. He'd gotten a girlfriend pregnant, repeating the pattern of Stanwyck's own mother, who'd been a teenage parent. Rather than help him through it, Stanwyck shut down completely. The vulnerability required to help her son face what she'd faced was more than she could give. From that moment, they were strangers. When asked about her son in interviews, Stanwyck's response was cold and final. "I have no son." That phrase, spoken while Dion was still alive, communicated a level of rejection that shocked even Hollywood insiders familiar with family dysfunction. The final confirmation came when Stanwyck's will was revealed after her passing in 1990. The document left Dion exactly $5,000, essentially the minimum amount needed to prevent him from legally contesting the will. The bulk of her multi-million-dollar estate went to friends, her longtime publicist, and various staff members and charities. The message was unmistakable. She would rather give her fortune to anyone but her son. Barbara Stanwyck's legacy as a feminist icon became complicated. Yes, she was a strong, capable woman who succeeded against the odds. But professional strength doesn't automatically translate to personal warmth. Her inability to connect emotionally with her adopted son showed that even the strongest women can fail at motherhood when they can't access the vulnerability that love requires. The $5,000 inheritance became symbolic of that failure. A precise, calculated amount that said, "I acknowledge you exist, but I feel no love for you." Barbara Stanwyck's rejection was formalized in a will, but some stars destroyed their families through more active betrayal. The daughter who revealed old blue eyes was actually cold. Frank Sinatra was old blue eyes, the voice, the chairman of the board, the ultimate embodiment of cool sophistication. His musical genius, acting talent, and magnetic presence made him one of the 20th century's greatest entertainers. His daughter Tina appeared particularly loyal, often defending her father publicly and staying close to him throughout his life, which made her 2000 memoirs all the more shocking. In My Father's Daughter, Tina Sinatra revealed the cost of that loyalty and the price the family paid for Frank's ego and appetites. She wrote about growing up listening to her parents argue about Frank's latest affair, hearing her mother Nancy Sr.'s pain through the bedroom walls, watching as her mother's dignity slowly eroded under the weight of repeated betrayals. Tina described crying herself to sleep as a child, confused about why her father would hurt her mother so deeply and so often. Frank's serial infidelities weren't discreet or respectful. They were flagrant displays that humiliated Nancy, while Frank seemed almost proud of his conquests. The betrayals went beyond infidelity. Tina also revealed her father's rumored connections to organized crime figures like Sam Giancana, connections that put the family in potential danger and created an atmosphere of fear whenever certain visitors came to their home. She described Frank's emotional volatility, the explosive temper that could turn a family dinner into a frightening episode, the mood swings that kept everyone walking on eggshells, never knowing which Frank would show up. The memoir forced a reckoning with a question Frank had avoided his entire life. Was his talent worth the cost to his family? Tina's answer was complicated. Yes, her father was one of the greatest entertainers who ever lived. Yes, his music brought joy to millions, and his performances were legendary. But her mother Nancy never recovered from the public humiliation. She spent her final years dignified but damaged, having sacrificed her happiness for a man who treated her sacrifice with contempt. Frank's talent didn't excuse his cruelty. It just made the cruelty more tragic. He could have been a great man, but he chose to be a great performer instead. Frank Sinatra's infidelity wounded his family through years of betrayal, but some stars created wounds through more unexpected revelations, connections to darkness that seemed impossible given their wholesome images. The son who connected her to the Manson family. Doris Day was America's eternal wholesome sweetheart, the girl next door with the bright smile and sunny disposition. Her films defined innocent romance, and her hit song Que Sera Sera became an anthem of optimistic acceptance. Day seemed to embody pure, uncomplicated goodness. Her son Terry Melcher became a successful music producer, and the public saw them as a perfect, all-American family. But Terry's accounts would forever complicate Day's wholesome image. In 1968, Terry Melcher met a struggling musician named Charles Manson, who was trying to break into the music industry. Manson auditioned for Terry at a recording studio, performing songs and trying to impress the successful producer. Terry ultimately decided not to sign Manson, finding his music interesting but unmarketable, and sensing something unsettling about the man himself. That rejection would have unforeseen and horrific consequences. Terry had been renting a house on Cielo Drive in Los Angeles. After he moved out in early 1969, the property's new occupants included actress Sharon Tate and her husband, director Roman Polanski. On August 9, 1969, members of Charles Manson's family brutally ended the lives of Sharon Tate, who was 8.5 months pregnant, along with 4 others at the Cielo Drive house. Many investigators believe the Tate residence was targeted because it was Terry's former address. Revenge for rejecting Manson's music and what Manson saw as the dismissal of his messianic vision. Terry didn't just carry guilt about potentially triggering the Tate tragedy. He carried a darker secret about his mother's role. In interviews before his passing in 2004, Terry revealed that when he told Doris about meeting Manson, she encouraged him to pursue the recording deal, seeing it as good publicity for her wholesome image. She thought having her son discover the next big thing would be a great story, Terry later revealed. She pushed me toward Manson. Then when it all went wrong, she erased it from her memory, pretending it never happened. When Terry tried to discuss the events and his guilt with his mother, Day allegedly refused to engage, insisting they never speak of it again. Terry's accounts also revealed a more complex portrait of his mother than her public image suggested. He described Doris Day as controlling about her image, obsessed with maintaining her wholesome reputation, and demanding that Terry's life also conform to a perfect picture. The pressure to live up to impossible standards of wholesomeness while carrying guilt about the violence created enormous strain. The wholesome mother who sang Que Sera Sera had nudged her son toward Hollywood's greatest monster, then refused to acknowledge her part in it. Doris Day's connection to darkness came through her son, but some stars' darkness came from their own perfectionism turned pathological. The perfectionist who made his children fear him. Gene Kelly was joy personified, the most athletic and exuberant dancer in Hollywood history. His performance in Singin' in the Rain remains one of cinema's most iconic moments. A man so happy he dances in a downpour. Kelly's films embodied American optimism, showing that with talent and determination, you could dance your way through any problem. His perfectionism created revolutionary choreography that pushed the boundaries of what dance on film could achieve. But his daughter Carrie's accounts would reveal that the joy visible on screen masked tension and fear at home. Carrie Kelly wrote about growing up with a father whose perfectionism wasn't limited to his professional work. At home, Gene Kelly's impossibly high standards extended to every aspect of family life. Carrie described how her father would explode in rage when family members didn't meet his expectations, when a meal wasn't prepared exactly right, when children didn't behave exactly as instructed, when any detail fell short of his vision of perfection. Carrie recounted one incident that showed how far her father's perfectionism went. At age 12, she was cast in a school musical. Gene insisted on helping her rehearse. For 3 weeks, he drilled her for hours every night, criticizing every movement, every breath, every facial expression. On opening night, Carrie was technically perfect in rehearsal and emotionally miserable. "I wanted to make him proud," she later said. "But when I looked out and saw him in the audience, I froze. Not from stage fright, from terror that I'd disappoint him. I forgot the entire dance. I just stood there on stage, paralyzed." Gene Kelly's daughter, frozen on stage by fear of her perfectionist father. The irony was crushing. Carrie also revealed that her father's controlling behavior extended to her activities, her appearance, and her choices. He micromanaged his children's lives with the same intensity he brought to choreographing a dance number, seeing their behavior as a reflection on him rather than expressions of their own individuality. When disappointed, Gene Kelly became emotionally cold, withdrawing affection as punishment until his standards were met again. His children learned to fear their father's disapproval more than they learned to share his love of creation. Carrie's revelations transformed Gene Kelly from a purely joyful figure to a cautionary tale about perfectionism's dark side. Yes, his standards created great art. But when those same standards were applied to human relationships, they created fear and damaged spirits. The man who danced with such freedom kept his family under tight control. The joy was only on screen. Gene Kelly's perfectionism created fear through impossible standards. But some stars created even more lasting damage through scandal and shame, through choices that exploded publicly and forever marked their children. The daughter who lived through Hollywood's most shocking scandal. Joan Bennett was a sophisticated actress who appeared in films like Father of the Bride and played elegant, complex women on screen. She seemed happily married to producer Walter Wanger, and their family appeared stable and successful. Her daughter Diana witnessed what looked like a perfect Hollywood life. Then, in 1951, that perfect image exploded in the most shocking scandal imaginable. Joan Bennett was having an affair with agent Jennings Lang. When Walter Wanger discovered the relationship, his rage was immediate and violent. On December 13, 1951, Wanger found Lang in a parking lot in Beverly Hills and fired 2 shots into him. Lang survived the attack, but the scandal was enormous. The attempted violence made headlines worldwide. Diana's accounts years later revealed something the newspapers never reported. Her mother had been planning to leave Walter for Jennings Lang that very week. Diana had helped her mother pack in secret, folding clothes and gathering jewelry, complicit in what she thought was her mother's escape to happiness. Then came the shooting. Suddenly, Diana wasn't just the daughter of a scandal. She was complicit in her mother's planned abandonment of her father. She'd helped pack the bags for the man her father tried to eliminate. The guilt of that complicity haunted her even more than the public shame. Diana described being at school when the story broke, seeing the headline on a newspaper stand, and knowing that everyone now knew her family's darkest secrets. She had to defend her mother while processing her own feelings of betrayal about the affair and her unwitting role in it. She had to visit her father in prison while understanding that he had tried to end someone's life, and that she had been helping prepare for the very betrayal that drove him to violence. The scandal effectively ended Joan Bennett's A-list career. She continued working, but never regained her former status, relegated to television and B-movies. For Diana, the lasting damage wasn't just the immediate scandal, but the permanent shadow it cast. She grew up as the daughter of that scandal, never able to escape the whispers and knowing looks. Her identity became permanently tied to her parents' catastrophic choices and her own inadvertent role in the tragedy. Diana Bennett survived, but she carried the weight of her parents' scandal and her own complicity for the rest of her life. Joan Bennett's daughter witnessed her mother's scandal explode publicly. But our final star's children witnessed something even more tragic, a slow destruction from within, as their glamorous mother became complicit in Hollywood's darkest practices. The beauty who pressured women into abortions. Ava Gardner was called the world's most beautiful woman, and few disputed the claim. Her legendary beauty, sultry voice, and tragic romantic history made her one of Hollywood's most captivating figures. She married and divorced 3 times, to Mickey Rooney, Artie Shaw, and Frank Sinatra, creating a romantic legend that seemed both glamorous and heartbreaking. Fan magazines portrayed Gardner as the tragic beauty who could never quite find lasting love. But posthumous accounts from family and friends would reveal something darker. Gardner wasn't just a victim of Hollywood's system. She became a participant in its cruelest practices. Those close to Gardner revealed that she underwent multiple terminations of pregnancies during her career. Some were reportedly demanded by studios who didn't want their glamorous star dealing with the realities of motherhood. Others were allegedly pressured by her famous husbands, particularly Frank Sinatra, who didn't want children interfering with their careers and lifestyles. The trauma of these forced procedures left Gardner emotionally damaged, contributing to her struggles with depression and alcohol later in life. But more disturbingly, Gardner apparently didn't just endure this cruelty, she perpetuated it. Multiple sources report that Gardner actively encouraged other women, including friends' daughters and younger actresses, to terminate their own pregnancies when faced with unexpected situations. She allegedly pressured these women to choose career over motherhood, sometimes even helping arrange the procedures herself and connecting them with the same doctors who had performed her own. Those who knew Gardner suggested she had internalized Hollywood's message that pregnancy and motherhood were incompatible with stardom. And she passed that toxic message to the next generation with almost missionary zeal. Gardner's story reveals the tragedy of the victim becoming the perpetrator, perpetuating the cycle of control and pain. Her own trauma from forced procedures didn't prevent her from inflicting similar pressure on others. The beauty that captivated the world masked the sadness of a woman who had internalized the industry's cruelty so completely that she helped enforce it on others. She had been wounded by the system, then became one of its enforcers, ensuring that younger women faced the same impossible choices that had damaged her. If these 18 stories have changed how you see Hollywood's golden age, please give this video a like and share it with others who love classic Hollywood. These stories matter. They show us that even legends were beautifully, tragically human. These 18 stories represent more than simple scandals or family dysfunction. They reveal the enormous cost of maintaining Hollywood's golden facade, a cost most often paid by the children who live behind that facade. From Cheryl Crane, forced to end a life at 14 to protect her mother, to Judy Lewis, denied her identity for 30 years and placed in an orphanage by her own mother, to the Crosby brothers, whose pain was so unbearable that two chose to end their lives. These children paid prices their parents should never have asked them to pay. What's most remarkable is the courage these children showed in finally telling their truths. Christina Crawford risked being called a liar and an opportunist to reveal the abuse she endured. Gary Crosby faced a nation that didn't want to believe White Christmas was sung by a monster. Jamie Lee Curtis maintained her dignity while acknowledging her father's final rejection. B.D. Hyman published while her mother was still alive to read every word. These weren't acts of revenge. They were acts of survival, attempts to reclaim identities that had been shaped by secrets and lies. These revelations don't erase the artistic achievements of these stars. The films remain masterpieces. Gene Kelly's dancing is still joyful to watch. Bing Crosby's voice still brings comfort during the holidays. Joan Crawford's performances are still powerful and compelling. Charlie Chaplin's Little Tramp still makes us laugh. We can hold two truths simultaneously, appreciating the art while acknowledging the pain behind it. Understanding the full story might deepen our appreciation. These were real human beings, not marble statues erected for our worship. They were flawed and complicated, capable of creating beauty and causing damage, sometimes in equal measure. The studio system's role in all of this cannot be overlooked. Hollywood in the Golden Age was a machine designed to create and maintain images at any cost. Studios controlled every aspect of stars' lives, covering up scandals, fabricating backgrounds, and demanding silence about anything that might tarnish the carefully crafted personas. That system created enormous pressure on stars to maintain impossible standards of perfection, and that pressure often flowed downward onto their children, crushing them under the weight of maintaining the family's public image. Modern Hollywood, with all its flaws, at least allows for more transparency. Today's stars can be divorced, can discuss their struggles, can be open about their imperfections without studios controlling their every move. That transparency prevents some of the intergenerational trauma we've seen in these stories. When secrets don't have to be kept at all costs, they lose their power to destroy families across generations. These legacies are now more complete, more honest, more fully human. The children who spoke out transformed their parents from untouchable legends into flesh and blood people. Complicated, flawed, sometimes cruel, sometimes kind, always human. That transformation isn't a destruction of legacy, but a completion of it. Understanding the full story doesn't diminish our love for Golden Age Hollywood. It deepens it. We can appreciate the artistry while acknowledging the cost. We can love the films while honoring the children who paid the price for them. The greatest legacy may ultimately be the courage these children showed in telling the truth. They broke the silence that had protected their famous parents' images at the expense of their own well-being. They chose honesty over comfortable lies. They reclaimed their stories from the studio system and from parents who had sometimes valued image over their children's needs. In doing so, they helped ensure that future generations of Hollywood children wouldn't have to carry the same burden of enforced silence. Thank you for watching this exploration of Hollywood's hidden family truths. If you're passionate about Golden Age Hollywood and want to understand the real stories behind the carefully crafted images, please subscribe to Golden Age Files. Share your thoughts in the comments about which revelation surprised you most, and let us know what aspect of Hollywood's Golden Age you'd like us to explore next. These stories matter because they remind us that behind every perfect image was a real human being with real struggles, and that sometimes the people who paid the highest price for those perfect images were the children who had no choice but to live in their shadow. Until next time, this is Golden Age Files, celebrating the full, complicated truth of the stars who built Hollywood's golden dreams.